me, Daryl. We're just going to do the very best we can. If the sound becomes an issue, Daryl will flag me. We'll sort this out. So thanks for being here. For those that don't know me, my name's Elizabeth Lyons. I've worked with the IEEE for well over a decade. And when I saw the coronavirus and the things unfolding, I thought it might be wise to gather all of us and talk through the job search and this whole situation here. So what we're going to talk about today is the job trends for 2020, kind of what they were before 2 weeks ago, and also what they are now. We'll talk about how to pivot in your job search, what you can do a little bit differently. We'll talk about very simple steps, the 5 things you need to be successful in any job search, no matter what the timing is. And then I'll get into some meat and potatoes around dealing with the job search and the coronavirus. I'll speak to what companies are going through and just, video interviews and so forth. I'll touch on that. And then we'll also talk through strategy. So I'm going to pause a minute. Daryl, how is the sound on your end?
First it was sounding good and now it's a little shaky, but let's keep talking. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Do you want to pop something in the chat box and give a call out and see how others are receiving it?
I certainly will do that.
Sure. I'm going to keep going. If you need to interrupt me, go ahead. So my name is Elizabeth Lyons. I am a career coach and a leadership coach. I've been in this space for many, many years. And I actually hire people. I've been hiring people for 18 years in engineering, IT, and at the executive level. For the last 6 years, my specialty has been in cybersecurity and security. So I'm pretty well qualified to speak to what's going on here because I'm in the trenches. I talk with vice presidents and directors and hiring managers every day, all day long. I personally select the slate of candidates that will go forward to them. And I've read well over 100,000 resumes. So I know what a hiring manager looks for. And then I know kind of what the trends are in the market. The job market follows very closely the economy and the stock market. So I watch those as well. So that's what makes me very unique. There's a lot of coaches out there that are retired or they came up with a program and broke out on their own. And sometimes what you find is the information really isn't current and they're no longer in the actual space. And I think that makes me very unique. And what I speak to is real-time information. This is literally what I'm seeing on the front lines through my coaching practice, right? Helping individuals through transition, but also in a hiring space as well. So everything I share with you is going to be pretty dead on. And frankly, I'm going to lift the curtain and show you things from an employer perspective that you may not be aware of. I think that it'll help you to get some understanding and some empathy about what it feels like on our end too. So this presentation is a little bit different than what you're going to see before. So I know this sounds crazy, but I want everybody to take 3 deep breaths and just humor me. Just take a couple deep breaths and feel your feet. And that's going to help you to center and be able to really get everything out of this presentation. So what's going on with people right now is we're doing a massive exercise in change management. So if the first piece was like you had change management and you lost your job and or you wanted to do a job change and you're trying to wrap your head around that emotionally, now we have this whole thing within our country, our economy, the world, right? And so I would be very remiss not to acknowledge that people are in their houses now and there's a lot of feelings that are coming up. What's interesting about feelings is it always goes into behavior. So everybody has their way of coping with this time. And the biggest reason why it's so difficult is because no one has any control and no one knows when this is going to end. And when people get in that space for long periods of time, eventually their behavior starts to change a little bit. So I've spoken to several clients this week, and one of the things that they've said, very interestingly enough, is they're husbands are either, knee deep into home projects or work and they hardly see their spouse. Or, in the beginning they were running out and getting all kinds of groceries and they were panicked and not sure that they had enough. And it was interesting to see the responses of some of these clients' spouses. But those feelings are going to come up, and it's important to get those to kind of clear through and calm yourself down, because then you can actually deal with the job search. I read an article yesterday and it said, if you can table your job search, I would. I don't agree with that. I think it's something that could be focused on, that could be very positive, and that could be very productive. And I don't think waiting is a good thing in terms of that, because once things open up, it's going to be, you want to have some activity already there and some groundwork there. So the other piece I would say that's really important is, there's a lot of focus in washing your hands. There's a lot of focus in staying indoors. But the irony to me is there's really no discussion around your physical immunity. And that is actually a key piece. So it doesn't matter, if you, even if it was the flu, if you touch something that had the flu and your immunity was very high, your odds of getting it would be low, or you wouldn't get it as bad. So taking care of your immunity right now, that's important. So the quality of the food going into your body, physically moving, walking, you can walk outdoors. They just don't want gatherings. You don't want to be all at the park on top of each other or the beach, but walking is fine. If you've got a home gym, there's a lot of stuff online about home exercises right now, HIIT workouts, different things you can do. You want to be physically moving somewhat and get away from the computer and get away from the news. So that's an important piece of immunity. And then, you want to take breaks from the job search, but I think it's really important to keep it moving forward. And then the other thing I would sincerely prescribe, and I definitely take my own advice here, I would scale back a little bit on the news, and maybe some social media. So for me personally, I stop everything at 5 o'clock and I watch the news for about an hour and a half. Sometimes I go to 2 hours, usually an hour and a half. So for me personally, I catch national news. I want to know what's going on in the country. I want to know cases reported of the coronavirus. And I look at local, because I need to know how many cases are in my town, what is the situation here. And then I also bounce into the CDC, which is a great source as well. Everything else, as far as I'm concerned, is going to bring up my anxiety. And what I personally found is it sucks me in. The horror of the situation sucks me in. So now I've just got my head inside the box, watching the TV. And it's not good. It does produce a level of anxiety you might not be aware of. And then all of a sudden you're not sleeping and you don't know why. So it's change management, right? You got to roll through the feelings. You got to get some sort of a pattern. You've got to get some sort of a plan and kind of go from there. So change management, more about this. Daryl, I'll get to you in a second. I saw you pop up in the corner there. So schedule is important, and I read a lot about that online, and ironically, I had that same kind of issue where if I was working from home, it wouldn't have been a problem. I'd get up, I'd log in at a certain time, work, maybe run to the store at lunch, come back, log off. For some reason, it seems different, right? And so having a schedule, even for myself, it's super structured. I had a hard time the first week, right? I found myself either up way early or sleeping in late. So having that cadence is going to help you. It's going to produce a body rhythm, and it's going to produce some stability within the mind as well. So I think that's important. And as silly as it sounds, maybe pencil out, today your schedule for next week. How much time would you like to dedicate to the job search? How much time, do you want to do maybe a house project or something? Have set times when you're going to eat or exercise. I know it sounds silly, but get yourself a little schedule and do your best to kind of stick to it, knowing that, something might jog it off one way or the other. Again, the reliable sources are definitely the CDC. I look at my local news. The other day, my husband, Steve, and I were watching something, and he caught like this 2-minute clip of the president speaking, and I instantly said, I don't want to see that. I need to see the whole thing, because it could be swayed one way or the other. I do not need a sound bite. if I'm going to see the president, I got to see the whole 45 minutes or hour. So reliable sources are important right now, because it's going to help you to know, how to pivot, because we're going to be pivoting hourly, daily, and weekly right now. I do want to speak around breath work from a scientific perspective, which I think you will all deeply appreciate. So breath work actually has a science on the brain and on the nervous system. So it literally, breath work, meaning focusing on your chest, slowing down your breathing, feeling your feet, puts you in a physical body, puts the mind into the body. It has an impact on the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps slow down the heart rate and restore the body. It sounds overly simplified, and the reason I say that is because you have a high amount of intelligence, you want things to be complex, and I swear to you, this is so simple that it seems like it will never work and it's stupid. But actually doing some breath work would help to focus better and to be able to plan ahead and to stop kind of the panic feeling around whatever you're feeling, the job search or whatever. The articles I read over and over again, they're actually speaking to breath work, but they don't tell you why. So I thought I would, plug this in here. A word again about nutrition. So I don't know about your house, but we started ordering online, and I looked up and there were 4 boxes of cereal and some ice cream and some other stuff that frankly we never would have bought any other day. But it's in the house, and it was, it's in the house because partially it's comfort food, right? Because we're not sure what the heck's going on here. So again, going back to the immune system, probably don't want to be putting a bunch of carbs and sugar into the body if you're trying to keep your immunity high. I mean, it seems, again, so simple and logical, but good nutritional food will help as well. Monitoring your thoughts during this time, I think, is really important. I'm going to be vulnerable and very transparent with all of you. I'm in great shape, frankly, mentally and emotionally, but I had a meltdown last week when the food order didn't come. And I was up all night because I thought, oh my gosh, if the food orders don't come, how am I going to get food? And I can't be out and about, and I'm not going to go into a grocery store. And so that was interesting. I got myself in my mind to this place of scarcity and almost panic, didn't sleep. And then it worked out fine. The next day I called the store. The store actually did a special delivery for us. And then the second food order that was lurking out there actually showed up. So it all worked out, but I learned a lot about myself and where I start to go off the map in my mind. And it was definitely showing with, the people in the store and everyone around me, which they now had to deal with my outburst. So I think that, I talk a lot about this on every webinar. For those of you that know me and have read my books and seen my videos, what does Elizabeth Lyons always talk about to the nauseous point? I always talk about making friends with your mind, watching your thoughts, monitoring, and the reason I always said that was because times like this happen, and boy, oh boy, here we all are. And if your mind is a mess, and if it was messy before, it's really going to spin out of control now. And then you got to pull it back, and it's even harder if you haven't kind of developed that discipline around your mind. So again, I would, you can look at the thoughts. I wouldn't empower the thoughts, right? So for me personally, going into the future, when I find myself doing that, I stop it. And I go, okay, I got food right now. It's 85 degrees in Dallas. I can go for a walk. My health is good. Everything's, I have to go into the moment and really say, I'm okay, and this is fine, and pull out of the future. So also knowing kind of what your mind does, where does it go, I think it's understanding it. And Lord knows we have enough time to sit around and examine what goes on in our mind right now. We just don't want to put investment into the thoughts that are not going to be uplifting or positive right now, because you're going to spin out. And then, trying to get you into the job search is going to be harder. So the other piece I would say is, this too shall pass. I don't know what it looks like on the back end of this. No one does, but it will pass. I mean, we saw 2008, 2009, and millions of people out of work. This isn't that, but we will get through this. We will be very different on the back end, though, for sure. So I'm just going to slow down a bit here. I'm going to do one more sound check. Daryl, maybe in the chat box, I saw a couple people chime in, said they could hear me. Is everything still good?
For everyone, believe they can hear you fine.
Excellent. Good, good, good. Then I'm going to keep going here. So these numbers, this is like before 2.5 weeks ago, this is exactly where we were. Exactly. So we had the lowest unemployment since 1969. We had 3.6% nationally. We were seeing the end of a bull market. And about now, and I saw it, you know, we're definitely pulling into recession here. Now, I want to say one caveat in this. The unemployment has gone up, but when you look at it, most of it for right now that I'm aware of, I want to put that disclaimer in. For right now, what has fallen apart is those service jobs or things that are tied to trade shows are falling apart, or travel. That stuff is where the unemployment is going high. Waitress, waiters, you know, a lot of that stuff is falling apart. So that's where you're starting to see that unemployment number jog up, obviously. 2.5 weeks ago, people that were looking in the job market were doing because of very extraneous, unusual circumstances. There weren't a lot of job seekers out there at all. They had a lot of demands, right? They wanted, you know, higher salaries, and they had demands. If they were going to do a job change, they definitely had some demands, the candidates I spoke with. But the reality was the best job offers happened at least 12 months ago. Best job offers meaning they left their company for $20,000 more, you know, a bonus, you know, a very healthy package. Those job offers kind of stopped about a year ago. You know, I haven't really seen them. And in the fall of 2019, I would go as far as to say the offers were actually soft. They were lateral moves at best. So I sit in Dallas. I threw this slide in here. Our unemployment was even lower. It's like 3%. The positions here are very specialized and they're very selective. There still were offers going out at the VP level and at upper levels. The market was moving very fast prior to 2.5 weeks ago, but the offers were, again, a little on the soft side. They weren't generous offers like they were, say, 12 months ago. Now, I'm going to say something. I'm going to pause so you can read this. What I want you to look at, I don't know if you can see my pointer. If you look at 2009, right, this was at the peak unemployment. These are what the numbers look like from a bear market when it was really, really terrible to a bull market, right? So unemployment, these were the numbers and how the unemployment went by month, right? You can go all the way across unemployment. And then in 2019, we ended in October, 3.6 unemployment. So again, those of you that have followed my work over the years, I always explain to you a recession cycle, and typically recession, you know, from a bust to boom market, right? It's typically, you can set your watch by it. It's typically 10 to 12 years, right around there is where you're going to see it. Now, 2008, 2009 happened much quicker prior to those 10 years because of the financial fallout and the loans. So that was a little unusual, but so it was a much shorter run on a bull market. But this is what it looks like, you know, just so that you can see unemployment numbers. This is kind of the pattern that it falls, right? At the high, 7.8, at the low in January 4. And then, I mean, these numbers were even lower. But I just wanted to kind of get a sense of what does an unemployment market look like, and, you know, have some sense around that, because it's normal, right? If you set your clock, we were more than due for one. So what is it like now, like literally now today, like March 27th at 12:20 in Dallas? What does it look like now? This is where we're at. It's the end of the bull market. There's a ton of volatility in the stock market. I mean, it's down and then it's way up, and then it's down and then it's way up. And I think we're going to continue to see that until we get out of this weird place that we're in with the coronavirus and staying in our houses. The unemployment in some areas is gonna spike. It's definitely gonna spike. again, this is just my commentary around it. If, right? So if everything goes the way it goes and we all start to go back into the offices and back into work in, say, May or late April, really things aren't going to get back to normal, another 30, 60 days. I mean, if, I think what you're going to find is the stock market and everything is going to jump again because people have been in their houses. They definitely want to go out, spend their money, get out and about. The jobs, and I'll go to this at the end of the presentation, but the jobs that have been put on hold are all of a sudden going to start to come back. I think it's going to be a reorganization, but if we get through this time now, I think it's a pause and not a complete fall apart mess. But again, I don't know, and I'm not an oracle, but you can't expect to see this, right? The unemployment in some areas is going to spike now, and we are certainly seeing that now and today. I discussed about this, right? So if there's too much damage, are we still in recession? It's hard to say how that's going to look, what's going to be impacted, what industries are going to be impacted. And then we could also see, that we got some increase and some good stuff from all of this that ends up happening as well. Right now is still a good time to get a job strategy. So what that means is not, I got to find another job right now, but like the long term is really important. I suggest this. I was reading online last night. A lot of experts are saying the same thing. So the ability to pivot, what does that mean, right? What can you do with your skills? How can you repackage them? How can you look at different things? To have a long-term strategy about where are you going, what are you doing, what do you want in the next job, what makes sense, and try to predict what's going to be available in the market, I think is important to kind of start to think longer term in all of this as you go into your job search. There will be some higher competition for certain jobs if the unemployment remains high. So you're going to see more job seekers out there possibly applying to ads or networking within certain companies. And I'll touch on this again, but I can't say it enough. It is important that you follow up with the companies that you interviewed with the last, right, even 30 days. Maybe you had final interviews 2 weeks ago. It is really important that you follow up, but it is even more important and more critical that you are highly compassionate and sensitive to the recruiter or the company that you're following up with. Because sometimes they can't tell you what's going on. And there's good reasons for that, and I'll touch that at the end of the presentation. And you have to also understand they might be working at home and they're trying to sort out work from home schooling with their children and everything else. People are in their own personal hell right now. And then they've got their company that they're trying to project. And then we've got what's going on in the economy. So you want to follow up. You really want to be extremely cordial and sensitive, because if you're not now, I guarantee you that is what's remembered. So if it becomes all about you and your job search and you demanding an answer, and you're not overly sensitive in the email or the phone call you put through, that's what's going to be remembered right now. So, and you just don't want to blow up what could come to fruition for you in 60 days, right? So lots of things we can't control. There are a few things we can control. One would be certifications, or if you need to get recredited or gain some continuing ed credits for what you already have. So for example, if you're a project manager and you have your PMP, is there any classes that you can take to keep your continuing ed on that? Looking very deeply at your skill set. What can you add? If you're in security, could you get your CISSP? Could you get your CISA? If you're a project manager, could you get the PMP? If you're a network, can you get another Cisco certification? If you have any interest in cloud at all, might be a great time to get some sort of a cloud certification. Even if you don't have the experience, that might be helpful. ITIL, huge, call out. Companies love it when you have it. Get your ITIL certification. Lots of those kinds of things are online classes. And you can put yourself through that curriculum and pull a certificate and have some really great stuff in your tool belt between now and when things start moving again. Second thing you want to consider is networking and video interviews. Now, like, are you ready? Like, literally, is the camera pointing the right way? What does the room look like? Are you comfortable with this approach? That sort of stuff, being ready. And at the end of the presentation, I left some helpful links that you can read up on as well. And I'll touch more on video interviewing at the end. And then again, that note again, definitely follow up. I'm all for it. I mean, I was hearing from candidates today and last week. You might also ask the person that you've interviewed with, hey, I want to be sensitive during this time. How do you want to do this? May I follow up with you once a week? How would you like me to approach you? And asking that very directly would be a great way to handle things right now. So I'm going to pause for a moment and we're going to switch gears. These are the 5 things that you would need in any job search. It's very simply laid out, because what I found was individuals are getting a lot of information from a lot of experts. And then the very next week you get exactly different advice for the same question you just asked. So what happens is the job seeker will change their resume a bunch and then doesn't understand why they don't get calls. Or, they change their LinkedIn a bunch and then don't understand why they don't get calls. So what I realized was, if job seekers just had 5 things to focus on, and they fixed it or developed it once and left it alone, and they started a job search that way, they're actually further ahead than if they keep changing things and taking all this input in. So all this input is exactly the input I would give to a client that went through my transition program. So this is all you really need. So a solid resume. If you want the cover letter, great. If you don't want one, it's not going to make or break you one way or the other. You want to have the resume have a lot of white space, right? So 0.8 font and 4 pages long, or anything longer than 2 pages is probably too long. Certificates are great to have. You want that visible at the top of the resume. So I have my PHR. So when you see my name, it's Elizabeth Lyons, comma, PHR, right? So it's visible. It's there. It's at the top and it's at the bottom on a resume. They can see that. So you want to showcase that sort of stuff. You want to always consider the reader. So if you're a highly technical person, does the reader understand, how to read this resume? Now, typically, my strong advice would be, if you're sending resumes out and no one answers you, stop sending it. There's something wrong. In this market, I wouldn't say that, because we don't know what's going on. So if you're seeing ads out there, I don't think it hurts to apply and at least have your name in the pile there for when things start to heat back up. This slide is particularly important in these times now. So consistency and focus. Having a plan is really important. Being positive when you're doing the job searching activity. Having a plan that says, I'm only going to do this for an hour a day or 2 hours a day, and meet your commitment with yourself. It's really important that you have this, because the bottom line is, right now you're planting seeds, and those seeds will bear some sort of fruit in about 30 to 60 days, and you want to be ready. So, and you definitely want to be ahead of all the other people that may get laid off in the next 60 days that go spilling into the job market. So this piece about being consistent is really important. LinkedIn. Great time if you want to update your LinkedIn, if you'd like to change your headshot. All you have to know on the LinkedIn, it needs to follow the resume. That's all. What you don't want is, you got your LinkedIn says one thing and your resume says something totally different. You want them to basically follow the same skeleton, and just have it easy to read. There's lots of LinkedIn experts out there that you could reach out to. There's tons of free articles and stuff that you can read, but they pretty much all say the same thing. So if you read 5 articles, you probably covered the whole internet on this subject. What I have noticed, and I do want to share with you that's different, is in the headlines, there tend to be kind of punchy and fun and eye-catching. So if you look at my headline, it's definitely different. So So go look at that and you'll get a sense of it. What they started to do is that whole thing is changing, where it's become a little bit more casual, a little bit more fun, a little bit more conversational, not just in the LinkedIn headline, but even in some of the resumes. I'm finding much shorter resumes. I'm finding things that are called one sheets or a hybrid one sheet, which I'll talk about at the end. So the actual layout and format of the resumes are actually starting to change. There's this new trend, and the new trend is kind of short, quick, in, out, and punchy kinds of statements, almost like thinking that you're on Twitter in your LinkedIn headline. What are you going to say about you? I came across this by accident, and then I started seeing it in the resumes that were being submitted to me. I Googled the words best LinkedIn profile. I Googled the words best bio, and every single one that they showed kind of highlighted this casualness, fun to read. I felt like I was looking at a person and not a long list of accomplishments. So you can kind of check out what I did if you Google those things and get a sense of what's being shown out there. You may have some resistance to it. Frankly, you might be like, I don't like that, and I don't think a hiring manager would like that, but you'd be surprised. A little bit of that sprinkled in might go a long way in separating you out and kind of highlighting and showcasing you. But if you're technical, to go too far that way may not make sense either. But check it out. I'm definitely seeing resumes formats are starting to change and starting to look more like what I'm describing. Okay, so this piece is around why you. I mean, that's basically it. When you're applying for jobs, you're doing these video interviews, when you're networking with people, maybe get prepared today and this weekend. Why you? If you had to bullet point why you in 5 things, write that down. And then I want you to think, as crass as it sounds, does anyone care? Because what you think are your hot spots or what are really great may or may not be what the audience does. And sometimes we get so focused on who we think we are, we lose track of what's really valuable to the market or to the employer. So I want you to think about why you. And I think that's an important piece out there in the job market. What is very valuable that you can bring to an organization? The other thing that I touched upon earlier was the one-page sheet. If you Google one-page sheet, executive one sheet, and then images, it will pop up all kinds of stuff around what that looks like and what that is. They're really fun. They're really different. It can be also colorful, but they really do help stand people out. I'd still have a regular, normal resume, if you will, but the one sheet is a cool thing that you could have as well. Again, you've got time, might be fun to work on, so check those things out. The line item here about the binder for a presentation, that would only really, if you're going to do a face-to-face, those are kind of off the table, until further notice. But the one sheet is something that you could pull together if you'd like. And then the 5th thing that you need that's really important is you've got to be ready for these mock interviews. You've got to be ready for the kinds of people that you're going to be talking to. Because the reality is, whether it's video, a phone call, or in person, you're going to touch on these 4 segments. The recruiter, that could be anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes to 30 minutes on the phone, to the hiring manager, which is typically a 30-minute chemistry check, to be honest. And then you get thrown into the tech interview, which is a panel interview. Sometimes it's on the phone, which is really scary because you can't see them. You don't know where they're going with all this. And then the final is the HR interview, which may or may not break you depending on what level you are, depending on how much influential power HR has in your organization, depending on a lot of things. So you want to be ready to change your language and your focus to show these 4 different kinds of skill sets in people, what's important to them. I want you to kind of think about that. Am I ready for these people? What kinds of questions are they going to ask, etc.? Okay, so the reality is you're going to be, if you're in interviews at all, it's going to be virtual interviews at this point. So These interviews are going to be typically, you know, right in front of the camera. These are some great things you're going to want to think about. One of the pieces I can share with you is several years ago, I was starting to do a lot of these webinars and I was being on camera a lot. And so one of the smartest, simplest things we did was my husband had a laptop and I had a laptop, and he literally, he went into Skype and I went into Skype and I sat in the room and he could see me, right? So, and he gave me feedback like, you don't want that picture on the wall behind you, or we need to put a screen behind you, or the lighting isn't good, or tip the camera this way or that way. It is the quickest, easiest, fail-safe way to get real-time feedback around how you look, how are you presenting. So that's the first thing I would say, is just have somebody in a device in another room and have them take a look. And then you might switch places, have them get in front of the camera that you would be on, and you take a look at that room and get a sense of what that is. Overall, you know, if you're in an interview, as best you can, if you're not comfortable with this, you're going to have to get comfortable with this fast. Pretend that you're sitting in front of them. For a long time, the screen bothered me. Now it doesn't bother me at all. I feel like I'm right there with people. So it's really you that feels like you're not there. It's a mental thing. So you want to kind of get through that. Close, you guys are tech people, so this should, you know, probably be redundant here, but close web browsers, applications you got running in the background. You know, put your phone next to you on silent mode so it's not ringing in the middle of an interview. I personally have a pet peeve with barking dogs. I know maybe I shouldn't, but it makes me nuts if I'm trying to have a call with somebody and the dogs, you know, are going nuts because Amazon just delivered. So you might want to kind of corral them or have somebody in the house take care of the dogs and keep them quiet while you're trying to do that interview. You know, hand gestures, some sort of feeling like you're not sitting there stiff in front of the computer is good. A lot of the articles that I read and the things that I've seen with clients is it would be really great if the candidate would smile or, you know, have the eye contact with me, which means you're going to look directly into the camera. Those sorts of things help that the humanness come through, and that's what they're going to want to see. So here's a good list. Again, at the end, I left you guys some links so you can do some study on that as well. Okay, so this is the hard talk. This is the part of the presentation that's usually not a lot of fun, but if I don't share this with you, I'm not doing my job in trying to prepare all of you. So here's the reality of any company right now. It's impossible to onboard. It's not even difficult. It's impossible to onboard anybody right now because we've pushed the whole country now work from home where we can. You know, we can't physically greet you into the office. Even producing the I-9, which has to be done, there's a visual check we do on an I-9 that verifies your passport or your driver's license to the person in front of us. We can't even physically verify that. That's a problem. To onboard somebody right now, the VPNs are all overloaded. The platforms are all overloaded. To get one more on might be a real issue. So we've got a whole technical issue in trying to onboard people. I personally have had a tremendously difficult time even onboarding a contractor because of those problems. So right now, everything is kind of on hold in terms of hiring. And it's very difficult for companies to go down that path because they know they want to keep going and they're just flat out unable. They're willing, but they're unable. Now we're at the point, as of this week, we can't even push your start date. So I found that this week, I can't even hire you, push your start date to May, because I go back to, I can't onboard you virtually. And the other thing we found out was we got to drug test you. No drug test places are open, folks. So that's out the window. So I'm back to, we can't onboard. And that's become a real hindrance for all of us. Can't, you know, these offers are going to stall, or I don't know that even if they go away or not, or how companies respond to this, but this is kind of where we're at. And so we can't onboard. So then the next thing is a lot of these companies just don't know how long this is going to last. Then they're like, well, I don't know, maybe we need to protect all of our staff here and stop hiring externally because I don't know where our business is going to be and I want to keep my people as long as that is. So then they start to drag and slow on the hiring again or stop it completely because they're unsure of the future impact. The other thing is they're not going to talk about this because then that causes all the pandemonium in the stock market. And then I go back to the very first slide when we first started around anxiety, right? And so now everybody's anxious and that's not helping anybody, not the people in their living rooms, not the people at the grocery stores, not anybody. So, you're not going to get this kind of straight talk out of companies. So I have to end the slide with simply this. You got to follow up, right? How you do it is really important right now because you don't know if you're trying to follow up with me and a week and a half ago, I didn't get my food order and I started to melt down. You don't know if I'm in that space. You don't know, you don't know where people are at, but I just say follow up because when this thing comes and lifts, it's really gonna work out. It's gonna all of a sudden open up. These are the sources that I wanted to give you. Couple of this one from the Muse was excellent, really good on the job search. There's one on video interviewing here, and then this last one from Forbes. There's stuff out there around mental health. This one I found to be really good. It really had some meat and potatoes in there. So I'm gonna slow down here and pause and see if we've got any questions in the chat.
Elizabeth, there was one question I sent you earlier. The person asked, is this a good time to be reaching out to potential references?
I mean, you could. I think you could reach out to references. I mean, everybody's home. I don't think that's any problem. Sure, I would do that. I think any kind of online networking right now is really good, and that's positive, right? So I think reaching out to people on your LinkedIn. Hey, how's it going? Being sensitive around that. Even sharing information like, well, what do you know about this ABC company? And the other thing I would say is it's also your opportunity in your job search to see how companies are responding to this, because that tells you, boy, ABC company was on my target list, but I don't like anything about the way they handled this and their people and everything else. Maybe I don't want to work there. So I think doing that kind of digging is helpful too, right? So I think all that, it can't hurt anything. I just think, you start the conversation with, how's it going for you, right? How are you holding up kind of thing. And then you kind of go into it from there. But I'd be real sensitive with agendas right now.
So I'll ask anyone if they have questions to please put your questions in the chat pod, which I actually see someone just asked, what do you do? What do you look for in newly graduated students' resumes? More school experience or other work experience?
If you're a year or more from graduating, I mean, right now I would honestly say just focus on school.
She said newly graduated students.
Oh, newly graduated. Same thing. Network online, keep applying, keep it moving. I mean, don't stop. It would be no different than if you were in a regular job search. That's what I would say. I would say, keep going.
All right. And you were correct too. Someone did ask a question about if they were a year from graduating, what would you rate?
If you're a year from graduating, you need to graduate. You need good grades. You need to have heads down and be in your house and not be roaming around and not putting yourself and others at risk. That should be a full-time job. Not why is this all about me and a year from now? Exactly what I said. The thoughts around the future are not productive right now. It takes you off of what you need to be doing. If you're that long from graduating and the job market, nobody can tell you what it'll look like, and it doesn't matter. What matters now is that you graduate with high grades and high honors, and you have all the time in the world to do that.
So as I was saying, yeah, please use the chat pod if you have any questions, or you can use the Q&A pod. Elizabeth, I had a question.
Shoot.
Yeah, you may have covered this at the beginning of your presentation. I couldn't hear everything, but some of our members are, who lose their jobs. It's sudden in that, everything is just swimming along in February and things are going fine, and all of a sudden in March, Corona hits and you're out of a job. Is there anything that, people can do just to deal with the suddenness of what has happened, or did you deal with that earlier?
No, I think, that's why, honestly, folks that are listening, I reached out to the IEEE because I had some other calls and I said, let's get everybody together because I thought of just that, Daryl. I thought, if you were all of a sudden in a job search and now you're in this situation, I mean, I myself would be a little bit panicked, right? And that's why we're kind of here today is to support the members of the IEEE and to give you some plan about what you can do now, to keep yourself moving forward. So these are unusual circumstances, right? And it's already unsettling. So I would just say, you're just going to do your job search the way you did. It's virtual now. So mentally just switch your mind there. You're still going to get online. You're still going to look for a job. You're still going to network. You're just going to do it in calls and video. You're just going to keep going and you're going to pivot in that direction.
A question came in the Q&A chat. I'm trying to read this. It says, do you have any recommendations for someone trying a minor career change? Example, staying in engineering, but change from computer to safety critical systems. How to network and explore remotely, informational interviews, etc.
Yeah. So what I would say is I'm all about the pivot. So I think that would be good. But pivot might be the skills that you have now, not dumping your original plan and going to something else. Because if you already have a lot of time and energy and schooling and money into one discipline, then you might pick up some certificates in something different to round out the skill. But I don't know that I would dump the whole plan and do something else because I think that might be a little bit, uh, that might be a little bit hasty. We're not there yet. I mean, you might reevaluate that in 60 days, but I wouldn't do that now. I would say, when I talk about pivot, for instance, I'll give you a tangible example, and then you can overlay it to your situation. So, so I am in talent acquisition. I hire people. Last fall, I got my PHR because I knew the economy would fall apart at some point. And so what that gave me was a pivot. It's when the unemployment goes down and if I get laid off, I have a credential that's going to make me more viable. I have a credential that employers are going to want. I could move into an HR position. I do not want to at all, but I could. It qualifies me now for different jobs, right? That's pivot. So you, instead of looking for the same old job that you've already done with just a couple bucks more and a nicer boss, the pivot is, how do I expand this? If you're in security, how do I expand this? How do I get into cloud? How do I get that certification? The pivot is about expansion. It's not dump it and do something totally different. And it's not do the same thing I've always done. So that's where I want you to think about pivot.
Uh, Someone asked a question, do you have any other recommendations for PhD students looking for jobs?
No, I mean, what you don't seem to understand is this game better than we do. You grew up with technology and FaceTime and chats and texts and everything else. You guys actually have the advantage for video interviewing and all that. Again, the only thing that you're doing differently is you're online, you're picking up the phone. That's going to be different for you, and you're in video interviews. It's the same job search. It's going to be the same thing. Now, what the job market looks like for you, I don't know, right? So I don't know in 60 days, do they not hire entry-level people? I don't know what it looks like. Nobody can predict it, but it's going to be the same sort of job search stuff, right? So if you go back to this presentation, you still need those 5 things. It's just you guys actually have the advantage where it's going to be virtual and you're probably going to be more comfortable at this than somebody that's mid to late career.
Elizabeth, I have to interject a question, and then there's one other question after that. I thought on your slide about virtual interviewing, I thought that was very intriguing and stuff. But one of the things said, show that you're engaged. Um, and obviously, I'm a bit older, and there are some people who may find themselves in this position who may not be used to doing these type of virtual interviews. How do you look engaged? Do you have any recommendations? Do you stare at the camera? Do you smile occasionally? Um, just anything you can add with that.
Yeah, I kind of, it took me some time, and now I'm there because I do a lot of my clients all over the country, and I mean, I've even had worldwide clients. So now I'm more comfortable with it. But what I found was I tried to just forget I was in front of the camera and not be so sensitive on how I looked and everything else. And so I also, in the very beginning, I would look directly into that blue light, and like, so that they felt I was looking at them and then I was with them because I was. Now I'm doing it now, just as we're talking here. I move my hands. You can see facial expressions with me. I'm much more natural. So I think it's really about just working to forget that you're visual, right? And just because, for instance, if I was standing in front of you, I wouldn't be thinking, oh my gosh, he's looking at me, like we're having this conversation. You know what I mean? Because you're face to face, you don't think that. The screen is the same way. And you can actually have your personality come through, and your gestures and all that very naturally. It will happen over time. But I think it's good, small things like look directly in the camera, smile, try, when you're focused on what they're saying, then you can respond, right? And that's good too, because then I think you'll relax and it'll be natural at that point.
We had another person ask. He says he's a first-time job seeker, and after just graduating school, and it's challenging. He said most job people ask for experience. He said, are there any tips that you can follow in terms of just looking for a job?
That's a hard one because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have the experience, you don't have the experience. There's no way to kind of doll that up. You're just going to have to, keep going, get comfortable with rejection. If they reject you, then you're going to, your job is to find the one yes, right? And so I think it's easy to get focused on the rejection or get focused on what's going to happen next, and that's going to be a bigger hindrance to your job search than if you just focus on, okay, look, I'm only looking for one job, which means I'm only looking for one person that's going to take my skill set. I'm not looking for 100, I'm not looking for 10, I'm looking for one, and I'm here to find it. And when you have that kind of an attitude, you just keep working your way through the checklist and you just keep doing the process. The job hunt is a process. You're all IT and engineers. I want you to just think of this as a process, and you just keep working it through from A to B over and over and over again until you get the result that you need. When you're not getting the result you need, you go back and you tweak the process. You look at it like that, I think some of the anxiety will go down.
Elizabeth, I see no more questions. I'll give anyone, if they have any final questions, to give that opportunity to type those in. In the meantime, Elizabeth, I'll say thank you very much for coming on in such short notice to give us this webinar and give us this insightful information. We really appreciate it. Congratulations to you on getting your SHRM certification.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm not seeing any more questions, so I want to thank everybody who attended this webinar. We are recording it, so we will be putting it up on our IEEE-USA website, hope probably early next week. And again, thanks again. And I'll leave if you have any final words, Elizabeth.
Nope, that was it. Guys, just keep positive, keep moving forward, and breathe. Oh my gosh, please breathe. Feel your feet. That's all I have. Have a good day.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and we appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.